Armor Wars! Who knows from one day to the next what this project is actually going to be. This thing was announced back in December of 2020, I believe. And so a couple years later, still haven't filmed or anything like that. It's going to be a while before we actually end up seeing this project. But like I said, it's like every time we talk about it, it's something different. Initially, it was just a War Machine series for Disney+. Then it turned into Armor Wars, with it being actually like, oh, dealing with villains that are trying to steal Tony Stark's tech. And then it turned into that, but in a movie form. And now, apparently, it's going to be a West Coast Avengers movie. So this is a new report coming at us from Great Phase, of course, a scooper we talk about a little bit here on the channel. I'd say is fairly reliable most of the time, but of course, take it as a rumor, can, take it with a grain of salt for now. But yeah, so apparently, according to Great Phase, Armor Wars is going to bring us the West Coast Avengers. So, for those who don't know who the West Coast Avengers are, basically, in the comics, there became a certain point where the Avengers roster just became so huge that they decided to split it up into a bunch of little groups, one of which being the West Coast Avengers, which is just the Avengers, but on the West Coast instead of New York. So, that's what we got going on here. And it's something we've actually talked about on the channel here a little bit here and there about the West Coast Avengers, mainly when it comes to some of these characters and Disney Plus shows that are coming up soon. Because, the characters that we have could form a West Coast Avengers lineup. And so according to Great Phase, this team would, of course, be led by Don Cheadle, of course, playing Rhodey, James Rhodes, Rhodey, War Machine himself, because, it is his movie, basically. This is supposed to be his solo project, so it makes sense that he would be forming the team himself. So he's going to be the team leader for the West Coast Avengers, and he will be joined by the White Vision. So the White Vision is a classic character from this roster and this team in the comics. This makes complete and total sense. In WandaVision, that's still one of the biggest cliffhangers left there, is the White Vision kind of just flew away. We haven't seen him since. Where'd he go? Well, clearly we're going to be finding out. We know we're getting that Vision Quest series on Disney+, and now we're getting this as well. Wonder Man is another one also, because we're getting a Wonder Man Disney Plus series where Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is going to be introduced as Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. And this is the big one that when it comes to West Coast Avengers, we've been talking about here on the channel, because I've talked about rumors and just theorizing that possibly we could see the foundation laid for the West Coast Avengers in this Wonder Man Disney Plus series. And now it seems like instead it's just setting up the character there and is actually going to bring him together to the team in this Armor Wars movie, which I think makes complete and total sense. But I do really like that they're going to be engaging this character to the team, because again, another classic character from the team in the comics. And then we got Shang-Chi, who I believe also at times has been a member of the West Coast Avengers in Marvel Comics as well. Of course, Shang-Chi, big new Avengers character after his phenomenal movie, Legend of the Ten Rings, back 2 years ago now, which is kind of crazy to say. Shang-Chi, of course, great character. We're all expecting to see him in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars and all that stuff. So that's super exciting. But Simu Liu, great actor. Really excited to see more of Shang-Chi in the MCU. And I think including him on this team definitely makes a lot of sense. Plus, he, I think, was from San Francisco. So I believe that's on the West Coast. So, I mean, makes sense, geography-wise. And then we have Ironheart, which is a little bit of a wild card here for me, because, I mean, it is Armor Wars, so it makes sense that we would be having another Iron Man themed character here, and I kind of already assumed that this character would be popping up in this movie, but to be a member of the West Coast Avengers is just interesting to me, because as far as from my knowledge, I don't believe she's been a member in the comics before. Then again, I could be wrong. But just from what I've seen, I don't think she's been a member in the comics. And I kind of assumed this whole time that they were building her up to be a member of the Young Avengers in the MCU, which could totally still be a possibility. But according to Great Phase, she's also going to be in the West Coast Avengers, which again makes sense because it's Armor Wars, but I feel like she'll be more prominent in the Young Avengers. And same goes for Haley Steinfeld's Kate Bishop, who apparently will also be a part of this team. She actually does have historical reference for this team in the comics. So it makes sense that she'll be featured here. Of course, Haley Steinfeld, great addition to the MCU and the Hawkeye Disney Plus series. I've been super excited to see her make a comeback. The rumor is she's kind of going to be the leader of the Young Avengers in the MCU. Makes sense because she's kind of the oldest member there for that team. So seeing her included here as well, she, out of all the Young Avengers characters, I think can be the one that kind of would pull double duty there, because she is the one that's, you know, an adult basically. So I think this makes a lot of sense. And some of you may be wondering, like, oh, in the comics, Clint Barton Hawkeye was also a part of the West Coast Avengers. Why is he not going to be in here? Well, I'm just assuming it's because Clint's probably going to retire again. I mean, especially now that there's a new Hawkeye, he's probably going to retire. I mean, he's already retired like 2-3 times in the MCU. Maybe he'll actually do it for real this time. But then again, I would love to see more of him. But I just think, you know, he's probably going to be done. This is what we're looking at for West Coast Avengers lineup here for this movie, which honestly looks really cool. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Again, according to just what Great Phase is saying about this team in the movie. So I'm really excited for this. But there are, of course, some other characters in the MCU already that have been members in the comics that could totally be making an appearance in this film and become members of the West Coast Avengers as well. Like, for example, you know, you see some of the characters right here. This would be a perfect lineup, honestly. You know, all of these characters were on the team in the comics. So we have like Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. She was a very prominent character in the comics, specifically because of her connection in the storyline with White Vision and Simon Williams' Wonder Man. So it would be awesome to see her come back. But, you know, she died in Multiverse Madness. 99% sure she's not dead. She's coming back. Rumors are she's going to be back in Agatha Coven of Chaos. She may be getting her own solo movie. We don't exactly know what the future of her character is going to be, but maybe it's just because it's going to be bigger than what they're doing here in Armor Wars with the West Coast Avengers. We also have Moon Knight as well, another big member in the comics, who was just recently introduced last year in a Disney Plus series, Moon Knight. Oscar Isaac has said, you know, there's going to be more of Moon Knight in the MCU. You know, we talked about Midnight Suns, him being in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. I think it makes sense for him to not be a part of this, because as cool as it would be to have him, you know, fighting alongside these characters like Wonder Man and White Vision and War Machine and all these characters, I just think Moon Knight, one of the things that I think really worked well about that series is it wasn't really a whole lot connected to the rest of the MCU. Like really not too much. It was very much its own separate thing, which I think works for this character, because this character I think works better either on his own, or if he is going to do a team up, I think Midnight Suns is something that works better for him, because those are just more you know, supernatural characters. That just works a little bit better. But we do have U.S. Agent, who, of course, was introduced in The Falcon and Winter Soldier, played by Wyatt Russell. John Walker, obviously set up for a huge future in the Thunderbolts. So I'm assuming that's pretty much the reason why he's not going to be a part of this, like he was in the comics, is just because, you know, he's already going to be a pretty prominent character in the Thunderbolts. Then finally, we do have Ant-Man and the Wasp, who did play pretty large roles in the West Coast Avengers in the comics as well. But we have, of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania coming out next month. So we don't know what happens in that. Does one of them die? Especially seeing where, like, maybe that may lead directly into Kang Dynasty. Maybe they won't be available. So I don't know what the situation is going to be there. But if possible, it would be off to see them pop up here. But it's not looking too likely. Now, where does the whole Armor Wars part of this come in? Because, you know, we're talking about the West Coast Avengers, and one of the biggest complaints I've been seeing online about this new update and this rumor is that they keep taking these black-led superhero films like Captain America 4 and now Armor Wars, and taking them from being a solo project for this strong black superhero and just turning it into a mini Avengers movie, like with Captain America 4, where it's basically like we're getting Red Hulk and the Leader and, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff going on there. And then this one turning it into not just a War Machine movie, but now instead it's going to be having the Avengers, the West Coast Avengers. So I think that's quite interesting. But here is where the West Coast Avengers kind of factor into this, which I think actually makes a lot of sense for this. But I do think, you know, it is still going to have the main focus on Rhodey. You know, he's still the star of the film. Don Cheadle's been waiting over a decade to get his solo project, and it's finally here with Armor Wars. And I think it's because the rumor right now, and this is where we tie in the whole Armor Wars part of it, is that the main villain, according to Great Phase, will be Ultron. So Ultron is going to be making his grand return to the MCU. This is something, another thing we've been talking about on the channel. I did a video a couple weeks ago, rumors that Ultron was coming back. You know, obviously main villain of Age of Ultron. He made a reappearance in What If as kind of one of the main villains there as well. And Ultron is just one of those just great Marvel villains in the comics, and he's just like always finding ways to come back. I mean, he's a robot, he's an AI intelligence. There's so many simple ways to bring him back. So I think this makes perfect sense, and it's just something that gets me really excited because Ultron, I actually really enjoy Avengers Age of Ultron. I know a lot of people kind of like to hate on that movie, but I really love that movie. But I definitely would like to see an even better done version of this character. And I think Armor Wars is actually the perfect place to do that. And this kind of makes sense as to why the West Coast Avengers would be here, because I mean, sure, it would be cool to have just a War Machine versus Ultron, like that would be cool, but then again, Ultron is such a powerful character, you need the whole Avengers team here to stop him, and especially with White Vision and his connections to Ultron. Ultron's the one that created Vision. I think that would be a really nice dynamic to play with here as well. Now, how does Ultron even come back online? Like, how do we get Ultron back? Well, one of the big, not really rumors or reports or anything like that, but really just a fan hope is that we will see Sam Rockwell return as Justin Hammer in Armor Wars. This has been pretty much since Armor Wars was first announced. We're like, all right, what character do we want to come back? Justin Hammer. That is the character we want back in this movie. I think it makes perfect sense. You know, he just finally gets out of prison. He tries to fill that vacuum that Tony Stark's death has now left. And he's like, hey, I'm going to bring back Ultron. And that is exactly what he does. I think that would make a lot of sense. Would really tie in nicely to bring that character back. So that's something I'm really personally hoping for. Let me know in the comments below if you are as well. So Ultron being the main villain here, again, his presence I just think makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I would really like to see, because again, I did a video a couple weeks ago, rumors Ultron was coming back in a big way, and out of all the upcoming projects, this is the one that I would say probably makes the most sense for him to not only appear in, but be the main villain of. So I think this is really exciting. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about these rumors and reports that the West Coast Avengers are coming to the MCU for the Armor Wars movie, and the Ultron is also going to be making a return as well? So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.